Okay. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Melissa Close. I'm the Cases Commissioning Lead at Emerald Publishing, and I want to thank you all for joining us for this webinar on Enhancing Case Writing Excellence, Insights and Awards from the CEEMAN Emerald Case Writing Competition. This annual competition is very near and dear to our hearts in the way that it supports new case authors and case perspectives from emerging markets. So I'm very happy that we are joined by our partners today and past winners of the competition itself and our judges to speak on the opportunity it presents and hopefully give you a bit of information on how you can participate and improve your case writing. So we got a lot to cover today, so I'm going to hop right into the housekeeping. So Emerald uses GoToWebinar for events such as this, and you will notice that you have a control panel on the right-hand side of your screen that is going to allow you to change your settings. You can change the audio if you're not hearing me right now to a different speaker on your computer. And as a note, you can use the Q&A function in order to submit comments and questions to our panelists. Your microphone will actually be muted for the duration of this session just to keep things a little clean and organized so we don't have any background noise. Please do send questions as we go through. You don't need to wait for the end. And please note that the presentation will be recorded and distributed at the end of today to whatever email you registered under. We've got a full agenda today. First off, we will be sharing a welcome and introduction from myself and Adrian. I'm the CEEMAN director. We will also be sharing insights from the judges with our lead judge, Leaf. And finally, some best practices from the 2024 winning case of the CEEMAN competition, Sid Waitra, doctoral candidate at Indian Institute of Management in Ranchi. We will end with that Q&A section, followed by some closing remarks, and that should bring us right to the end of the hour. So to get into the introduction, I'm going to speak first about Emerald Publishing. We provide a large program of case studies covering the entire spectrum of business and management topics. And we truly believe in the ability of case studies to create real-world impact, both through the research that authors conduct with organizations directly to write the case studies and in their ability to engage and inspire students in the classroom and impart with them those key skills and understandings that they're going to take with them into their future careers. So we strive to provide as diverse a case collection as possible so that faculty have all the options they need when choosing cases for their classroom, and also to support authors with various opportunities such as the CEEMAN competition and other special issues on different regions and perspectives that will fill out this program. I want to speak specifically about one of our collections, the Emerging Markets Case Studies collection, as this is the partner publication for this particular competition. So EMCS publishes discussion-based teaching cases that focus specifically on the emerging markets context. And the goal of this publication is to produce high-quality teaching cases that are going to offer students the opportunity to explore real-world challenges and questions in the classroom environment. We accept the full spectrum of business and management topics in both traditional length cases and the compact format, which for us is anywhere up to 3,000 words. So it is quite concise and designed to be read in just 10 to 15 minutes. We also accept cases based on primary and/or secondary data. However, the cases must be written about real people and real situations. We are not able to accept fictional cases. And of course, everything we do is unoriginal and unpublished prior to submission to EMCS. We strive to be a very rigorous publication in our Scopus Index and offer fully double-blind peer review. So you can expect high-quality feedback whenever you submit your case to the Emerging Markets Case Studies collection. We also offer payments upon publication and competitive acceptance rates, and we strive to give all authors a first decision within 90 days. These slides will be shared with you. They're actually attached to the documents in your little side control panel. So I've also linked our author guidelines if you want to use this to go explore more into the Emerging Markets Case Studies collection. Now that you know the outlets, I want to talk about the CEEMAN case writing competition specifically. So this is in collaboration with the International Association for Management Development in Dynamic Societies, also known as CEEMAN, and it has been in operation since 2007. So it's a very long-running event for us. And the goal of this competition is to promote the development of high-quality teaching cases relevant to dynamic and emerging economies. So in order to submit to this particular competition, you have to have that focus in your case and be based on a real situation in a real company. We offer a prize fund of 4,000 euros, with the top case getting 2,500 of that. And we also offer a couple of deadlines. So the first is our early bird deadline on February 28th of 2025. So you still have a few months if you want to prepare a case for this competition and use the early bird. This particular deadline means that your case is going to be shared with our lead judge, and you will get some initial feedback to help you improve the case for the final submission deadline of April 15th. So this can be very helpful in cleaning up your case study and also improving your odds of being one of those top cases. You don't have to participate in the early bird. You can also just submit the deadline itself. So any cases received by April 15th will be considered for the competition and also for publication in the Emerging Markets Case Studies collection. Even if you do not win, you will still be considered for publication and be given all due consideration by our editorial teams. And we will strive to announce the winners in June of 2025. I also wanted to share the case titles from last year's winners, one of whom you'll be hearing from today. So the first place case was From Gavels to Algorithms, the Vidhi Partners Gen AI Evolution. And you'll be hearing from Sid today to speak about this case and its origins and what was learned in the writing of it and the participation in this competition. The second place case is Kabak, a Latin American startup aiming to disrupt the used car market across emerging economies, by Sayeda Ikarma and also Sayeda Mashiha Kumar. And the third place case was Empowering Farmers and Enhancing Sustainability, Inaro's Impact on the Dominican Cocoa Industry, by Swetha Kumari and Jutesh Nair. And all of these cases were, I think, quite strong. I'm sure that our judge will be able to speak to the review process of them a bit more, but we really thank these winners for participating in our competitions and congratulate them on their accomplishments. And we look forward to welcoming this year's batch of submissions in order to do the same thing all over again and just recognize case writers for their contributions. And then at this point, because these slides will be shared after the presentation, I just wanted to pause and provide you with some resources you can use preparing your case studies. So the first is a how-to guide on writing a case. This provides a checklist of all the different elements that are required before submission that you can use to guide yourself through the writing process. Emerald also provides the Emerald Cases Hub, which is an online platform that you can register for free. And this includes past webinars, sample cases, other language resources, and also courses on writing cases and teaching with cases. So you can actually take yourself through the entire process with resources that have been designed by case writing experts. We have a number of videos, infographics, guidelines, etc., that are going to take you from the idea stage all the way through to getting ready to submit for publication. And then finally, if you're writing within the compact format, we have the Compact Guide to Compact Cases. This is a book that was written by one of our past editors, Rebecca Morris, that is available for purchase on our website and helps provide a number of useful roadmaps, examples, practice exercises to help you write in this really compact format, because there are certainly challenges to writing so concisely, and this book strives to help minimize those challenges. And that is my last slide. So I actually wanted to invite the director of CEEMAN to unmute herself if she wanted to say a few words about the competition. And I'm just going to go back to the Emerald CEEMAN case writing competition slide. Jerem, are you able to speak?
I'm here with you, Melissa. Thank you so much for the nice introduction. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, case writers, partners, thank you so much for joining us today as we celebrate the achievements of the CEEMAN Emerald case writing competition and recognize the exceptional work of this year's participants. CEEMAN has a long-standing history and commitment to fostering excellence in management education. Since 1993, we have been dedicated to enhancing the quality of management education across Central and Eastern Europe and later globally. One of the key initiatives that embodies this commitment is our annual case writing competition. In partnership with our esteemed partners Emerald Publishing, we launched this competition with the vision of promoting relevant real-life case studies that resonate with current challenges in global management and inspire educators worldwide. Our case competition has grown from modest beginnings into an internationally respected platform that attracts diverse, high-quality submissions from around the globe. Since the beginning, when we first documented our case entries, we have received hundreds of submissions from 81 countries. This is an impressive growth that reflects the deep engagement and enthusiasm of educators, researchers, and professionals who contribute to advancing management education through insightful case studies. Each year, the competition attracts entries that explore a range of topics, from innovative business models and strategic challenges to pressing social and environmental issues. This year's submissions were no exception, with entries from 11 countries represented a truly global perspective on case writing. And the diversity and the depth of those cases reflect the vibrant and ever-evolving field of management. And it's exciting to see how these cases provide a unique learning experience. We're very delighted to celebrate today's winners, the winners of 2024 case writing competition, who embody the excellence and creativity that this competition stands for. And our winners from the Indian Institute of Management, Ranchi, India, has contributed an outstanding case, demonstrating a profound understanding of the relevant field. And we commend the winners and the runner-ups in their dedication in setting such a high standard in case writing. As we look forward to future competitions, CEEMAN remains committed to supporting the development of management education through initiatives like this. And in addition to recognition of the winners, we provide scholarships of different sizes to the winners and the runner-ups to attend CEEMAN's flagship program called IMTA, the International Management Teachers Academy, and also to receive a free participation at the next CEEMAN annual conference. And by the way, the 2025 conference will happen in Durrës, Albania in late September 2025. So we do that just to complement, let's say, that mission and provide the educators with the opportunities and resources to expand their networks and their knowledge. And just a few words about this IMTA that is offered to our winners. This is a flagship faculty development program designed to equip management educators with the state-of-the-art teaching skills. And since its inception, it has educated over 750 participants from more than 50 countries, focusing on innovative pedagogy and enhancing educators' ability to create impactful learning environments. And in closing, I would like to express our deep gratitude to our partners at Emerald Publishing, our dedicated jury members, and of course to all the participants who took part in this year's competition. Your passion and your commitment continue to elevate the quality of management education and inspire us in this field. Thank you so much for the contributions, and congratulations again to our winners. And over back to you, Melissa.
Right. Thank you so much. That was a great introduction to the organization and its mission. And likewise, we're so grateful to have you as a partner to help us make this event possible. So with that being said, I think we should hop into the judge's perspective. And I will swap over my slides to Leif's presentation. So it'll just take me 1 second.
Okay, so I really look forward to receiving all your great cases. and I assume the reason you are here is that you want to be the next winner. So let's hope that's the case. Let's move straight into what does it take to become a winner. Yeah, can you? You need a very good teaching note, and you need a very good case. And this may sound obvious. It's not obvious. So note that I put teaching note first and case as second. The judges will mainly evaluate the teaching note, the quality of the teaching note. So it's not easy to write a good case. It is very difficult to write a good teaching note. And the fact is that we receive lots of good cases, but the teaching note is not quite good enough to become a winner. And I will talk more later about what you need to do for the teaching note. Let's first go into the case, and let's look at the next slide. So what is a case? Sometimes we receive submissions that are not really cases according to the definition we use. The main reason is that you have not read the author guidelines. So start by reading the author guidelines. But basically, a case is it's a description of a management dilemma. So you see dilemma is highlighted in red. There should be a decision or a dilemma or something that is the key theme of this case. You can have more than one dilemma, that's okay. If you have too many, you make it very difficult for yourself. So usually a case would have one, possibly two, maybe even three different dilemmas. Let's move to the next slide, which is kind of a second alternative definition. This is what is a good case. So again, the key thing is it tackles a relevant, important issue, a dilemma. It's, in most cases, a decision that needs to be made. That decision is not obvious, which means two reasonable people can disagree. And this is the whole purpose of a case study, to have a discussion and try to argue and discuss different alternatives. It should ideally be controversial. Why should it be controversial? Because if you have a class discussion and things are controversial, you will remember it. You will have a much more richer classroom discussion, and you will remember it. A case study is a sample of one. So from an academic perspective, when you do research, you usually have large samples. The case study, you have a sample of one, and ideally, you should be able to provide some kind of generalizations. If it's a situation that's completely unique, you will never see it again. It's not really ideal. And it should not be too long. So there is a limit on how many words, but basically, my ideal submission as a judge is a case that is about 5-6 pages long with a teaching note of 20 pages. And that usually comes as a surprise to many of you. Keep the case short, try to keep or try to make the teaching note really comprehensive, lots of details how to use a case, and you have a much higher chance of winning the competition. It's quite typical to receive a case that is 20 pages long with a teaching note that is 3 pages. That is just not going to win. Even if the case is fantastic, that is not the purpose of the competition. So you need to provide a lot of attention to the teaching note. Let's move on to the next one. So typical challenges, or I should not really use the word, but typical mistakes when you submit a case study. And again, as I already mentioned a couple of times, it's about there's no clear dilemma. You have an interesting story, but it's not obvious what the dilemma is. Ideally, when you write the case, try to write the dilemma or try to flag the dilemma very early on. So after a few minutes of reading, the reader already has an understanding, this is what the case is all about. And that will help them focus on the key issues when they read the case. So, mistakes. Typically, the dilemma is too obvious, meaning the case is way too easy. There's not much room for disagreement, or it's too complex. Too complex basically means only the person who wrote this case is able to teach it. And the students, based on the information in the case, don't have a chance. So you need to find this balance between making it too obvious, too general, and too complex. The guidelines from Emerald is that the teaching note must be sufficiently detailed that the case can be adopted by other faculty with no need for additional research. I teach case workshops, how to write cases, how to write teaching notes. And once when I taught a case workshop like that, the participants said, anybody can teach this case. That is the perfect teaching note. Then you can pick up the teaching note and any person is able to teach that case. That is the kind of teaching note we want if you want to win the competition. Can you do the next? Okay. You need to provide answers to the assignment questions. So I will say a few words about the teaching note in a moment, but you have typical assignment questions. They are in the teaching note. The reason is that some instructors may decide to give different assignment questions than the ones you have in mind. But you need to provide questions and suggested answers. Please avoid general textbook answers. So there are many cases we receive where you basically read the teaching note and say, I didn't have to read the case to be able to give this answer. I can find this answer in any textbook. That is basically the situation where it's too obvious or too general. The ideal answer, first of all, the ideal answer is one that actually happened in the classroom, which means please try to test the case before you use it the first time. It's, to me, with many years of experience, it's pretty obvious when you have a teaching note that for a case that has never been actually used in class, it's not really rich enough. The ideal answer is where you actually give two answers. You give an answer that you say, this is an outstanding answer. It's an example of an outstanding answer. And you give an answer that is, this is kind of acceptable, but it's not really fantastic. That is, again, a very good practice. Next. Okay. Applying academic models without a purpose. It's very typical. So let's say that you have 4 questions for the case study. The first one is, please do a SWOT analysis. Number 2 is, please apply Porter's 5 forces. Number 3 is, please do a pestle analysis. And number 4, what do you think the company should do? And sometimes there's absolutely no connection between questions number 1, 2, 3, and number 4. So only use academic models if they lead to insights how to answer the dilemma of the case. If they're completely disconnected, and this happens a lot, not really best practice. Next. So the majority of the session is based on articles and not on the case. We get quite a few of those where the students are assigned 5 or 6 academic articles. And in the 90-minute class session, 75 minutes are used to discuss those articles, and then the last 15 minutes is on the case. A case should be able to stand on its own without having those articles, at least for it to be a winning case. It's a typical mistake, I think, for people who are not case teachers. They basically are more academic. And want to get into case teaching. Next, please. Be neutral. You are a case writer. You should be like what I call the BBC reporters. The case is not about your opinions. And sometimes, or quite a few times, I will receive cases that read like they have been written by the PR department of the company in question. You can express your opinions in the teaching note. That's fine. They should not be in the case. And the reason is that we don't want to bias the students. So some cases are so biased that when you read the case as a student, you know what answer your faculty member is looking for. That is not the purpose of case study. And finally, next. Again, most cases are too long and most teaching notes are too short. So my rule of thumb for the ideal case teaching note is that it should be 4 times longer than the case. And this is, again, it's very difficult to do. especially for those of you who do it for the first time or you don't have a lot of experience. But this is kind of what we are looking for as judges. And then there's one final slide. I will not spend a lot of time on it. This is about the teaching note. So you can read most of this yourself. There should be clear teaching objectives. So you need to have a target audience. And this is what you hope they will get out of the session. You should have a set of assignment questions that are aligned with the teaching objectives. So the questions are closely linked to the teaching objectives, and if you explain how they are linked, that's even better. And they should relate to the dilemma being faced in the case. It is also quite common to have questions that are not related to the dilemma, and that's again not best practice. And as I mentioned, you need to provide model answers to the assignment questions. So typical reason for not winning the competition is even if you have a fantastic, outstanding case, the model answers are too short or too superficial. This is really a key part of the grading. How good are the suggested answers? How good are the assignment questions, and how closely are they linked to the teaching objectives? So I will end here. We have a Q&A a little bit later, but I strongly recommend for those of you who are not seasoned case writers, please submit the early bird application. You will get a little bit of feedback. I would typically highlight these are the things that for the moment need to be improved if you want to win the competition. It's not a complete review, but it's basically a way of fixing the most obvious or improving the most obvious things that are missing from your case. So thank you very much, and I look forward to receiving your cases and questions a little bit later.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think that was a really practical presentation on things that work well and things to avoid. So I'm sure it was very helpful to the audience. I'm just going to switch over presentations now to our final speaker, Sid. So Sid, you can unmute yourself at this time and take it from here.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Leif. I think those were great insights, and I'm sure that everyone in the audience would have learned a lot. And in fact, I resonated so much from all what you were saying. Melissa, can we move to the next slide? I've kept it very short. I think I'll share a little bit about a background onto the case. I'll just share what was the central theme and the dilemma that we were looking to highlight. And then, of course, I think Leif and all the other judges will be able to share a lot more of what they thought about the case. But I think from my perspective, I'll just put forward what I thought, that why, what might have made this case interesting and what might have actually worked for this case. And in general, I think I'll conclude with some of the best practices, but I think Leif has done a very good job with that. So I think I'll probably skim over those slides as we proceed. All right, Melissa, can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So in sync with the objectives of the competition, we really look to focus this case on an emerging market, which was India, and we looked at a traditional law firm, a very traditional law firm, which has lawyers who are seasoned lawyers, who are practitioners who go to court every day. And typically, a lot of these seasoned professionals are very averse to technology. So the organization was prototyping two solutions around generative AI, and they wanted to enhance their legal research, drafting, client services. And what we did in the case was we were really looking at how we could integrate AI into a very human-centric industry, and also around challenges of whether people would actually adopt it. How should the protagonist or the partner in the law firm go about trying to not just have his internal staff members, but also have external stakeholders look into considering these solutions, and of course various other strategic choices that such as user acquisition, pricing models, and resource allocation. Next slide, please, Melissa. So the central dilemma that we kind of looked at this case was, like I mentioned, how to successfully implement generative AI. Two products that they had were prototyping and navigating the potential resistance from traditional minded workforces. Of course, that was the major theme. We also had a lot of other smaller, I would say, sub themes which kind of fed into the larger theme, and of course, at a much grander level. So at a small, behind this smaller theme, there was a bigger issue of how the organization might want to balance innovation and preserve its core values, which has made it so successful over the last 10-15 years that the organization has grown and scaled up. And how could Gen AI be actually used for all the right things to enhance rather than replace what we can call as the expertise of lawyers as such. Moving on, Melissa, next slide, please. All right, I think why the case might have been interesting. I did mention about the specific impact an emerging technology would have on a very traditional industry or a sector. So that was one thing. How could an organization look to balance say newer technologies or innovations with a very traditional resistant workforce? Importance of stakeholder management, understanding each stakeholder's needs and expectations, and catering to the broader sentiment of the workforce, ethical considerations, and of course the future of that particular industry, kind of open-endedly throwing it there that with everything that's happening around us, where does this industry stand to go, and how could not just lawyers but also people who are receiving services, legal services, stand to benefit, or what should they be aware of? So it kind of encourages a little bit of critical thinking, where the students are actually empathizing with what the protagonist is going through, and also at some level they are already forming their opinion as to what they would have done if they were in the shoes of the protagonist in that particular situation, so as to say. So yeah, I think that those are some of the things I felt that might have brought a little bit of I think a juice or a meat to the entire case, if I may use those words. Next slide, Melissa. Yeah, I think what might have worked for this case, I think definitely not recommended, but I was literally obsessed when I was writing this case study. I call it, my professor calls it being in the zone, and you're pretty much thinking about that one case when you are, whether you're walking, you're taking a shower, whatever else that you're doing. Of course, after the interviews, the data analysis, setting the narrative, we went through multiple iterations in that case study, put in a lot of effort on the teaching notes. I think we identified a huge list of questions which we thought we'd keeping the teaching objectives in mind, and then each question we kind of thought through which were potential ways how students could look to answer that question, what line of thought could they be looking to deploy, any overarching business model, if that could actually help the students make a more educated or informed decision was within. And of course then we narrowed it down to 4 questions to try and make sense of what we wanted to achieve in the case study. I think we got really lucky because we had a very supportive subject. I think very lucky there. I think that's very important to have a good successful case. Was willing to spare time to answer questions that we wanted to. Multiple iterations, of course, when we went through the leadership of the company that we were writing a case on were very considerate, were very generous with their time, I think, and that also helped. I think other small pointers, I think real world relevance, I think it's important what's happening to the industry itself, not just AI in legal specifically, yes, that's true, but also the impact of emerging technologies on a lot of other similar human-centric industries like maybe healthcare or others also. A lot of the concepts can actually be borrowed and applied. Strategic decision making, of course, and the open-ended nature of this case possibly might have also worked. Melissa, can we move on to the next slide, please? All right. Yeah. So I think I'll just touch on a few points which I think Leaf mentioned. I think these are just purely from my own experience. I'm no expert, and I think Leaf's already done a very good job of taking us through it. But I'll just share a few slides, few thoughts, which I think will make sense, and hopefully Leaf might also agree with these. Next slide, please, Melissa. Yeah, I think we've mentioned it already, but it's important that we identify a relevant and an important issue. Each case has to be catered to a particular audience, who has to say, and ensuring that it tackles one major key dilemma for the audience, which it is for the case is being written for and is intended to be taught in a particular class, or a section. Next slide, please, Melissa. Um, yeah, so I think Leaf also touched on this. I think a lot of, in my opinion, I think a lot of writers get so carried away while they are actually writing the case that the author in them really comes out. And I think all of us want, who are case writers at some level, we really enjoy the process of writing or putting together a story. But it's important that that we need to realize that it's a case with a clear dilemma which the protagonist is actually grappling with. Asking the right questions. More often than not, it's very easy for us to get carried away when we are either interviewing the subjects, or because you feel that Acha, this is something that can also be included. This might make it interesting, and then there is just so much to kind of put together that the case somehow loses what it's really looking to address. And of course, getting the hook, getting the participant or the student excited enough, and of course you always have a larger issue, which is kind of the background which the protagonist is hoping to achieve, whether it's adoption of technology, improving sales, improving profits, whatever else that the protagonist is looking to do. Next slide, please. I think again, Leaf touched on this. I think it stands alone. The case should actually stand alone on its own. Again, as researchers who are writing these cases, we might also feel that okay, this is something which a student can pick things up from his practical experience. And while that might be true, everything which the protagonist needs to make a decision on should ideally come within the case study itself, whether it's the prose, whether it's the exhibits, or whether it's just a little bit background on the protagonist himself, where the students or the readers can actually empathize his background, and probably try and place themselves in their shoes and try and see what they would have done if they were in that particular situation as such. I think I'm almost done. My next slide, I think, would be my last one. Yeah, I think make sure it's easy to read and it's very well structured. It's very, very important. I think it usually goes through 4 to 5 drafts. The case that we wrote actually went I think through 8 or 9 drafts, multiple drafts, which we kind of cleaned and brainstormed and pruned and ensured that we were actually hitting the right message itself. I think one good idea to be to do might be that we might want to write all the key headings and the subheadings, and then try and see if the kind of story flows or the entire thing patches together. I think that might be something that might work for you. It did for me, for sure. So I think just to kind of have a sanity check if this is something that it makes it a little more the story kind of comes together, and there is a flow to the entire case as such. I think that's mostly it from my side. I think please feel free, I think, to reach out if you have any questions, but I think over LinkedIn as well, and I'll be happy to kind of answer any questions if there are. Thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you so much, Leaf. Everyone for your generous insights and time and support. And hopefully good luck to all the participants next year. And I hope that you can keep enhancing the quality of cases that come into Emerald CEEMAN year on year. Thank you, Melissa. Over to you.
Hey, and thank you for that presentation, and congratulations again on winning the competition. That was really an exceptional case, and I'm glad we got to hear you speak about how it came to be. So transitioning over to our Q&A segment, if you've not already submitted your question, please do so. Just give me 1 second to take a look at what we've received so far. Okay, so I see.
Ask Sidra to turn on the camera so we can also see him when we ask the questions.
Yes, that would be great. If you are able to turn on your camera, Sid. Oh, the audience, I'm afraid, will not be able to turn on their cameras or unmute themselves, but they are able to use the Q&A function. So I do see a couple of questions have come through about the competition specifically. So one is, can I submit more than one entry to the competition? And the short answer is yes, they must be significantly different. So that is quite a lot of work to be writing multiple cases at the same time. But it is possible. We've had people do it in the past. We do have a limit of 2 per person, so no more than that. I'm just going to tackle these first ones because they seem to be a little publisher oriented. But we also have another question that asks, can I submit the same case to more than one competition? And the answer to that would be no, we do not accept simultaneous submissions. So if it's under consideration somewhere else, you're going to have to stick with that or decide from the outset which competition you prefer to participate in. At the Emerging Markets Case Studies collection, we are a COPE compliant publication, so we follow those guidelines. But I would just note we have a lot of folks interested in participating in both the competition and a special issue within EMCS as well. So that's one clarification I would make. You can submit in a special issue within EMCS and the competition, but you cannot be submitted to different outlets at the same time. Essentially, once competition judging is complete, you will either move into the regular pipeline or the special issue pipeline for further processing, depending on what you have selected. We also have a question that asks, if I don't win, will my case still be published? So yes, all cases are still considered for publication. It will depend on the feedback we receive and that peer review process. So we can't guarantee acceptance for any particular submission, but you will have all due consideration to keep moving forward with your case. Here are compact cases between 1,500 to 2,000 words accepted. Yes, they are. You are able to designate the compact format of your case study when you submit. And on this, I wonder actually if Leaf, you might have some advice for working in the compact format, just to expand this question a little bit.
So first of all, there's no limit on the teaching note. So you can submit, I've seen a case once that was 2 pages long with a 16-page teaching note. That would be perfectly fine. It's actually very difficult to do, but it's perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm. That's good to know. And just as a note, if you are working in this format, we have done webinars in the past on writing in the compact format, where we spend the entire hour just talking about how it's different, how it can be done successfully. So those are available on our YouTube channel if you want to go check that out and help yourself prepare for writing your case study. We've got another question here that says, it won't be possible for me to classroom test my case study before submission, but can I ask colleagues for feedback? Will it still be okay to submit such a case study? And I would say,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, do you have an answer, Leif?
Yeah, I mean, you should try to get feedback from colleagues. I mean, that's always useful. That's perfectly fine. In my experience, if a case has never been used in the classroom, it is not as good, especially the teaching note, because the point of testing it in the classroom is that there are things that are obvious to you because you wrote the case, but it's not obvious to the students, so you need to fix it. And sometimes you get completely different ideas than you had yourself. So it really helps if you can test it in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think it's incredibly helpful to be able to classroom test and get where you is how many learn it. Another question I see, learning objectives would you expect to be included down into compact cases and traditional length cases? And I might say, I have an answer for this as a publisher and what we most commonly see, but perhaps Leif or even Sid, you could speak towards setting learning objectives for case studies.
So I missed part of this, the voice broke, but again, I don't think we have a strict rule. So it's a little bit like cooking. It's an art, not a science. So not too many, because if you have too many, you just make it very difficult for yourself, and not too few.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I avoid the extremes.
Mm-hmm. Sid, is there anything you'd like to add on? I'm afraid you're muted.
I am so sorry. I think 4 or 5 would be a good number, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Great. So from the publisher's perspective, I will say we get a lot of questions on, for compact cases specifically, if it's okay to have fewer. And we do find that a lot of cases are still successful having fewer than the traditional length case. So that is okay. There is still no set number there, but there is a little bit of flexibility. Okay. Moving down, we have a question for the judge. So Leif, could you please elaborate on the specific criteria that were most influential in selecting the winning cases?
Not directly, in the sense that we don't really have a cookbook approach. But let me comment on Sid's case, since you just got introduced to it. There are very few artificial intelligence cases, or good ones, which is obviously something we liked. It's highly topical. It was in the context of a service industry. There are lots of manufacturing cases. There are not enough service industry cases, and especially for a law firm, there are very few law firm cases. And these were all things we really liked. It was a very practical dilemma. I mean, I think everybody can identify and understand the dilemma. It's very easy to disagree, and there's no obvious answer. I mean, some of the best cases are the ones where at the end of the session you just agree to disagree, but you respect that someone else will come to a different conclusion. So these are all things that make a good case. And since Sid mentioned it, but he decided to use 4 assignment questions. I think that's a very good choice. 4, 5, maybe 6, that's fine. But if you start with 20 assignment questions, you can also write a section about alternative teaching strategies. So you can have an additional section. If you don't like these questions, here are some other ones you may want to consider. And this is the way we would use the case if we picked those questions.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you very much for that answer. I think that's helpful. We also have some questions that focus specifically on conclusion. case study conclude, and are there checkpoints to keep in mind for drafting the conclusion?
So I guess that's for me. There are two things to keep in mind. One is, can this be generalized? When can it be generalized? When can it not be generalized? So if you look at Sid's case, I think it's fairly easy to generalize to other service industries, especially professional services. Maybe not so easy to move into manufacturing. So I think a discussion about this, and then an update, what actually happened.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. And Sid, just in regards to your case, did you encounter any challenges writing the conclusion or anything you learned that might be helpful to expand upon here?
I think what Leif mentioned was entirely accurate. I think what I would recommend is maybe just keeping it a little more open-ended, so that it gives the opportunity for the student to kind of tinker through where he wants to place himself or his thought process. And of course, it's very important that we mention what happened. So that section kind of concludes it appropriately, saying that this was the situation where the protagonist found in. He took X or Y step, and this is the result of that what happened. So that's really how you conclude the teaching note itself. I agree with Leif here.
And let me stress, the conclusion is in the teaching note, not in the case. So we many times receive cases that have a conclusion that spoils kind of the discussion.
Correct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a good point to highlight. Thank you both for that answer. Let me see here. We've got some questions around using primary data. Can you please advise on how to analyze primary data collected through interviews? Is there any methodology that could be applied? So I'll open the floor to anyone who wants to speak on that, but perhaps Leif first.
Yeah, I mean, that would be another one-day webinar, how to do it. There are lots of books. There are lots of books. If you are, for example, in a doctoral program, there would be seminars how to do it, but a short answer is very difficult to give.
I think to add to what Leif is saying, there are tools that are available. I'm not sure if qualitative researchers can kind of use those tools. So NVivo is there, Atlas TI is there. These are just tools to analyze the data. But I think it's very important to kind of refocus and bring the discussions or the data pointers to the specific considerations that you're highlighting. But like Leif rightly mentioned, it's very difficult to kind of put it together in a few minutes of how you would want to analyze it. Yeah.
I think those are very fair answers, and I would just say, we do have a number of free resources available, so I would recommend you take advantage of those. We also do a number of other webinars, so this is not the last one before the CEEMAN competition deadline, so you will be able to attend future events, and perhaps we'll be able to touch on that in a little bit more depth during another webinar. Another question we've received is for Leif. Do you look into the uniqueness of the case in the judging process?
So I think the answer is yes, in the sense that usually for CEEMAN, we get like 60, 70 cases to read. And after reading 70 cases, if it's unique, especially if it's controversial, it kind of stands out. So yeah, I'm not sure we should be looking for the uniqueness, but it's also, I mean, if it's a case about something that has already been covered in other cases, it's, I think, very difficult to find a winner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And then we also have a question, can it be an NGO or does it need to be a company specifically? And I would say, yes, it could be an NGO. It doesn't need to be a company. Whatever dilemma you are exploring, if it's relevant to the aims and scope of EMCS, it's fair game.
Yeah, I think up to 1/3 of the cases we receive are either NGOs or social enterprises. That's perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great. Oh, and we just have some folks chiming in that that would be a good topic for a webinar. So perhaps I'll look into that and do a dedicated session on the use of primary data and analyzing primary data in the future. So do follow Emeralds on our social media platforms and keep an eye out for that in the future. Okay. We have another question for the competition winner. And we've got about 5 minutes left in the session, so maybe we'll just get to 1 or 2 more questions and then we'll do the closing statements. But for Sid, what were some of the biggest challenges you encountered while preparing your case, and how did you overcome them to create a winning submission?
There you go. I was mute again. Very interesting question. Thank you so much. I think the biggest challenge, I think not specifically for the case that I wrote, but in general is getting a very supportive proponent or a subject. Different companies or NGOs or social enterprises have their own concerns of what they want to share, how much they want to divulge. Because they're also worried that at some point it might actually the researcher, whatever they might say, might make them look bad in the public eye. So I think that could be a consideration. But apart from that, I think it's a lot of work and a lot of grunt work, which not necessarily everyone might enjoy. I mean, of course, everyone loves reading a great case, but just going back with your drafts, putting a whiteboard in place, identifying those 4 or 5 key central themes that you would want to focus on, going through the recordings of the interviews, kind of mapping some of those ideas or thoughts to those themes, and then trying to come up with an entire narrative which you might want to build the case on. I think that's probably a huge chunk of the work, and if you're able to do that correctly, of course, and you have a supportive proponent, I think it becomes a little more manageable, so as to say. But of course, even then, the case does go through multiple iterations. The teaching notes do go through multiple iterations, and I guess if you have enough and more time to prepare, that just puts you in a little more comfortable position to be able to submit that case in a timely manner. I just submitted my case, I think, a day before the deadline, and I think I was very lucky that I was able to get it in right before that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much for that answer.
Just to add, I think I wish I had known, and I would have taken advantage of the early bird thing. So maybe Leaf could have given me some more insights on how I could have placed mine better. But yeah.
Yeah, the early bird deadline really is a great opportunity. So please do take advantage if you're ready by the 28th of February. But I was reading through just to check the rest of the questions. I think we actually covered everything. So we can move into closing statements, where I'd like to invite all of you to share any final thoughts you have for the audience. So I'll just go in order of which we spoke. So Ijareen, would you like to start off with some comments?
Well, sure. I mean, these were very important insights that were shared by Leif and Sid. And my comment would be just check out the websites of Emerald and CEEMAN and apply early bird. The earlier you have it, the better it is for everyone. So good luck to everyone. And again, congratulations to Sid.
Thank you very much. Leif, is there anything you'd like to close with?
Just you have my email. You can connect on LinkedIn if you have any questions you want to discuss, and send your early bird submission, even if you know it's not perfect. I mean, you will get some feedback.
Mm-hmm. Great. And then last but not least, Sid, is there anything you'd like to close with?
I think we've had a very productive session, but I think I just want to highlight one last point. Maybe I think you should enjoy the process of writing the case. You should enjoy, the art of researching, of putting together a narrative. And I think over time, I think you would probably get better at it. And it's really something that you would craft with time and give it that kind of thought and the time, and I'm sure that you'll be able to make a compelling submission next year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you all for speaking and sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you to CEEMAN specifically for partnering with us on this competition. We really appreciate your collaboration. And to everyone in the audience, I wish you the best of luck preparing your case studies, and we hope to see them for this year's competition. And with that, we've hit the hour, so I will let you all go. And if you have any questions, just follow up with anyone on this session. So thanks very much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to end the webinar now. So have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.